But the moment his back was turned, a sharp, broken cry rang out behind him. He spun around. The puppy had launched himself forward on his stubby legs, running as hard as his tiny body would allow, ears pinned flat with something very close to terror. Daniel stood still and let him catch up. The puppy reached his boot and pressed himself against it, shaking, not with cold, not with hunger, though Daniel could already see the outline of the pup's ribs pressing through his fur. He was shaking with urgency. There was a difference, and Daniel knew it. "You're trying to tell me something," Daniel said quietly. It wasn't a question. He crouched again, and this time took a longer look. No collar. Around the pup's neck, loosely knotted, was a strip of torn fabric. Dirty, frayed at the edges, stained with something Daniel couldn't immediately identify. The fur near his left shoulder was matted and slightly discolored, and when Daniel's fingers brushed the spot, the puppy flinched and let out a soft yelp. His front paws were scraped raw in places, the pads worn down like he had been running on hard ground for a long time. Someone had not taken care of this animal. Or someone had, and then something had happened to prevent them from doing so. The second thought settled, heavier. Daniel was still processing when the puppy did something unexpected. He stepped back, turned a tight circle, then gripped the hem of Daniel's pant leg between his tiny teeth and tugged. Gently, deliberately. The way a dog tugs when it wants to show you something, not when it wants to play. "Where?" Daniel asked, as if the puppy might answer. The puppy released the fabric, trotted 3 steps forward, and stopped. He looked back. His whole expression, if a dog's face could be said to hold an expression, was asking a single question: "Are you coming?" Daniel stood. His hand moved to his duty belt, not drawing anything, just resting there, out of long habit. "All right," he said. "Lead the way." The puppy turned and moved with surprising purpose for a creature so small. He followed the sidewalk to the end of the block, and then veered off onto a narrow dirt path that cut between a row of overgrown hedges and the chain-link fence of an unused lot. It was the kind of path that existed in plain sight but went unnoticed, too thin and uninviting to attract foot traffic, too ordinary to seem significant. Daniel had probably driven past the entrance 100 times without registering it. He followed the puppy into the shade of the hedges. Behind him, the sounds of the waking city softened and then faded entirely. Ahead, the path curved gently and disappeared around a bend. The puppy moved steadily, pausing every few steps to look back and confirm Daniel was still there. Each time he saw him, his tail gave a small, hesitant wag, not joyful but relieved, as though he had been carrying this errand, alone for 2 long, and was only now allowing himself to believe he had found someone capable of helping. Daniel noticed the ground. The dirt near the edges of the path had been disturbed. Recently, partial footprints, a scuffed heel mark, a place where something had dragged across the surface and left a shallow groove. He slowed his pace, eyes moving carefully. A glint of reflected light caught him near the base of a bush. He crouched and picked it up. A small metal zipper pull, clean and bright, no oxidation, recently dropped. He pocketed it and kept walking. The puppy had stopped ahead, standing rigid at the entrance to a small clearing where the path widened and the hedges gave way to open space surrounded by low trees. His ears were straight up. His tail was completely still, and he was staring into the clearing with the focused, unblinking attention of an animal that has learned the hard way to pay close attention to the world. Daniel moved up beside him and looked. The clearing was not peaceful. It had the look of a place where something had gone wrong. Branches snapped at mid-height, leaves scattered in uneven patterns, a section of ground near the center that was churned and dragged. A torn strip of dark fabric hung from a thorny branch at the far edge, twisted there like a small flag. The same material, Daniel realized, as the strip around the puppy's neck. The same color, the same weave. His throat tightened. The puppy walked forward on trembling legs, nose pressed low to the ground, following an invisible thread only he could detect. He moved in a slow arc around the disturbed earth, whimpering softly, and then stopped at the base of a pile of leaves near the far tree line. He pawed at it once, twice, then sat down and looked at Daniel with an expression that required no translation. Daniel crossed the clearing in long strides and knelt beside the pile. He brushed the leaves aside carefully, layer by layer, until his hand closed around something solid. He pulled it free. A purse, or what had once been one. The fabric was torn along two seams, the strap broken clean through, the interior pocket hanging open and empty. The zipper was missing its pull, the same small piece of metal now, sitting in Daniel's jacket pocket. He set it down slowly and looked at the puppy. The dog had pressed himself against the ground, head low, eyes never leaving the purse. A thin sound came from somewhere deep in his chest, not a bark, not a whimper, but something quieter and more private. A sound of recognition, of grief. "You knew her," Daniel said. The words came out soft, almost careful, as if he were speaking to a witness rather than an animal. The puppy lifted his eyes and held Daniel's gaze for a long moment. Then he rose, turned toward the deeper shadows at the far edge of the clearing, and waited. Daniel reached for his radio. His voice was calm and precise as he called in his location and requested backup. Then he stood, photographed the scene with his phone, bagged the purse in an evidence sleeve from his belt kit, and looked at the puppy. "Okay," he said quietly. "Keep going." The puppy moved into the trees without hesitation, and Daniel followed close behind, watching the small, determined figure navigate the undergrowth with a certainty that made something ache in the back of his throat. This animal had already been through something terrible. He was still afraid. Daniel could see it in the trembling shoulders, the low-held tail, the way he flinched at every unexpected sound. But he kept going. Anyway, that, Daniel thought, was a specific kind of bravery. The kind that had nothing to do with the absence of fear and everything to do with what you chose to do while it was still with you. The trees opened again, slowly, onto a second small space where the earth was softer, and the light fell in long, narrow bars through the canopy. The puppy slowed, his nose worked furiously at the ground, moving in tight spirals, until he stopped at the base of a wide oak tree and sat down. Daniel scanned the area. Then he saw the shoe. A single sneaker lying on its side in the leaves, laces still tied. A few feet beyond it, a phone with a shattered screen, face down in the dirt. And just visible beneath the low-hanging branch of a shrub, a set of keys on a ring decorated with a small enamel charm. A tiny German shepherd, painted in careful detail, ears alert and eyes bright. Daniel's hand stilled over the keys. He didn't pick them up. He stood and looked around, the clearing slowly, taking in every detail, then looked back at the puppy. The small dog was watching him, still trembling, still waiting. He had brought Daniel here through a path no one else would have thought to follow, across ground that held the evidence of something awful, to this quiet corner of trees and filtered light where a charm shaped like him lay in the dirt beside the belongings of someone who was no longer here. Daniel lowered himself to one knee and placed his hand gently on the puppy's back. The pup shuddered once, then leaned into the contact and let out a long, exhausted breath. Daniel looked down at him. "I have got it from here," he said quietly. "I promise you that." Backup arrived 11 minutes later. The investigation that followed would take weeks. But it began here, in a narrow, hidden clearing that a small German shepherd puppy had refused to let remain a secret, because the person whose keys lay in the leaves was someone he had loved, and love, even in its smallest and most trembling form, does not give up easily. Daniel Reed had seen many things in 12 years, but he had never been led somewhere that mattered by someone that small. He thought about that for a long time. Afterward, about what it meant to keep going when you were frightened and exhausted, and the only thing pushing you forward was the hope that someone, somewhere, would understand what you were trying to say. He adopted the puppy 3 weeks later. He named him Scout. Some partners, Daniel had learned, choose you before you ever think to choose them.